So, today we're going to unpack a really heartbreaking story. One of those local tragedies that somehow just explodes onto the national stage. It starts on a city street, but ends up sparking this massive nationwide debate about loss, about outrage, and really about what happens when our systems are put to the ultimate test. So it all kicked off on what should have been a completely ordinary evening. We're talking about an 18-year-old college student in Chicago, just walking near campus with her friends. A totally simple, normal moment in a life that was just full of dreams and ambition. But, in just an instant, all of that normalcy was completely shattered. And what happened next? Well, it sparked this incredibly fierce debate that really split people down two main lines of thinking. Was this just some random, tragic bit of misfortune? Or was it a sign of something much deeper, a failure in the system itself? Okay, let's really dig into this. So before we jump into all the arguments and the politics, it's absolutely crucial that we ground ourselves in the human story at the very heart of all of this. So the basic facts of what happened, they just sent absolute shockwaves through the community. You have this 18-year-old student. Her family described her as just so ambitious and kind. She was shot and killed. A 25-year-old man was later arrested and charged with first-degree murder. And it is so important for us to remember this is still an active legal case. The allegations, they haven't been proven in court, and the suspect, just like anyone else in that position, is absolutely entitled to due process as this all moves through the legal system. That's a key piece of this. And, this whole thing could have just stayed a terrible local tragedy. But it didn't. It was one comment, just a few words really, that completely transformed the narrative and, well, unintentionally lit a match to a firestorm. Okay, so the phrase that changed everything. Wrong place at the wrong time. And the backlash was immediate and it was huge. Now, look, it might have been said to suggest the whole thing was just random, But for so many people, man, it landed in a completely different way. Right away, the victim's family pushed back, and they pushed back hard. They completely rejected that idea of random misfortune. For them, this was not random at all. They framed it as a preventable tragedy. And by doing that, they were pointing a finger directly at what they saw as a failure of the very systems meant to keep all of us safe. And this right here gets to the heart of what people now call the wrong place myth. Look, psychologically, it kind of makes sense, right? It's a way we try to process something that feels totally senseless. We tell ourselves the world is usually safe and orderly. But, and this is a big but, critics say that phrase does something way more damaging. It subtly, maybe even accidentally, shifts the responsibility. It implies that maybe, just maybe, the victim could have done something different to avoid it. And that takes the focus away from the perpetrator and away from any potential failures in the system. It really forces us to ask a tough question. Should a college campus or, any public sidewalk ever be considered the wrong place to be? So yeah, this single event ended up creating these massive shockwaves. It ignited these really intense national debates that went way, way beyond this one tragic case. The ripple effect was just staggering. Think about it. It starts as a local crime story. That sparks community outrage. Then politicians start weighing in, and before you know it, it's a full-blown coast-to-coast debate about national policy. And that debate just exploded, covering this huge range of topics. All of a sudden, the national conversation was about public safety policies, about how effective our criminal justice system really is, about accountability from our leaders. And as more details about the suspect came out, it even pulled in heated discussions about immigration and enforcement. The whole thing just branched out everywhere. Right at the center of this whole debate is this incredibly difficult balancing act that our legal system is always trying to perform. On one side, you have the goal of public safety, right? Preventing dangerous people from committing more crimes. But on the other side, you have to uphold individual rights and the principle that not every single arrest means someone should be locked up indefinitely. This case became the flashpoint for that tension. It made a lot of people ask, has that balance swung too far one way or the other? And, of course, we absolutely cannot ignore the emotional impact here. An incident like this, it doesn't just affect one family. It sends tremors through entire communities. And fear can spread so much faster than facts, and it can fundamentally change how safe people feel just walking around their own neighborhoods. So after all the political debates, all the cable news segments, all the national attention, it all comes back to one single haunting question. the one at the very heart of this story. Because we have to remember, behind every single headline, behind every policy argument, there is a profound human reality. A young life, just packed with potential, was cut short. A family is left to grieve. And that is a truth that should never, ever be overshadowed by all the noise. And so we are left with that powerful question that the victim's family first asked. It's a question that echoes, long after the news cameras have moved on, and it forces all of us to really think about what we mean when we talk about safety, justice, and accountability. The question is, could this have been prevented?